Well, hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Joe. You should already know me since it's my podcast. And I'm joined by Josh Tater. Honestly, one of the best,
Sorry, it's
one of the best writers over on Substack.
thank you very much. It's actually Tatter, but you're not the first person to make the mistake.
Oh, whoops, désolé.
It's okay. You're not the first person to make that mistake. I've had to deal with it my whole life. I've heard all the nicknames: Tater Tots, Tater Mater, all kinds of funny stuff. So
Tater Rainer. No, that doesn't make sense.
no, it doesn't. But I've heard it.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, Josh and Nader probably sounds better.
I'm gonna stick with that one. That one's gonna stick. Josh and Nader.
Yeah, I used to call a guy I went to school with that. Then he passed, but nice guy. So yeah, Josh and Nader, go with it. But anyways, this is going to be Hero Hour. So this is the first episode of a new series where we're going to discuss, hopefully in depth, a world and a hero. In this case, it'll be Attilius from Josh's trilogy of stories, which really ought to be an entire 600-page novel, but Fate of an Empire.
Someday. I know it's been a while since I've updated it, but I'm still brainstorming, and I plan to finish it one day.
Hey, took Tolkien 17 years to write Lord of the Rings, and more than, 40 years or so to write Silmarillion. You take the time you need.
Hopefully I won't have to leave it to my son and Gabriel K to finish that. So
I probably will have to leave it to my son someday. The trouble with these fantasy worlds is they keep growing and you can't quite get them back under control.
Yeah.
Well, looking at your writing, you understand that probably better than anyone, because I'll want to start off because I finally got you on the podcast and say what gripped me about your world, even with some that I criticized, was just the amount of detail, the lore. Like, the characters speak of Noveria, the realm of your world, with like a familiarity and a knowledge, and yet you have a sense of the age of the damn thing, and that this isn't some new empire that's on the block. It's old. This is a world that's very, very old, and there's a lot of places. There's a lot of lore. There's a lot of ideas, and there's lots of world building. This isn't some 80s fantasy light story. This is expansive. And at least that was the sense I got, so that it was one of the first stories I read over on Substack, and I was stunned and immediately went, oh, I got to up my game, because damn, this guy's showing me up. I got to up my game. This guy is so good. And, I started off with less thumbs than you. And you,
I don't know. I mean,
crap.
I do read your fiction. I can't always read it all the way through because those 45-minute to an hour long read times make my brain hurt. But I don't know, man. I've seen the way like you start off your stories, and you're kind of like Tolkien in that you talk about these characters and you can tell that there's a very deep history there as well. So I don't know that I'm doing anything better than you. I mean, your stuff is very detailed and dense, and I don't mean dense in a bad way. I mean like there's a lot there.
I know what you mean. Thank you. But when it came to, I found that there was that density with Noveria, and I also like your French story. I have to shout out that one. You laugh with the cheese thing, and I remember I laughed so hard I cried. And I was like, but it really did remind me of Alexima, even though it was in English. It was like, oh my gosh, this guy's read Dumas. It was like, oh my gosh, he's read the Trois Mousquetaires, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is like D'Artagnan, except if he was dumber. It was like, oh my good lord.
The Three Musketeers was my favorite book for a while. So You know, it's been a while since I read it, but I was really into it when I was a kid and a teenager.
You've got good taste.
Yeah, I would love to write something similar to that one day, like a full blown novella or novel.
I'm working on one called Les Quatre Paladins, the Four Paladins.
Oh
That's an
wow,
element of that book. But what I'm wanting to do is rescue the reputation of Richelieu, because
yeah,
historically he was a heroic man,
right, yeah,
crybaby. Like he,
yeah. I know when I've read about him, and I'm like, this doesn't really match up with what's in Three
yeah,
Musketeers, you know. But I guess we
I,
needed a villain, so
yeah, and I just remember reading the history book. Like you grow up with that in French, and you're like, oh yeah, he was a dastardly fellow. You read up in the history book, then he burst into tears for the fifth time in that meeting. What?
yeah,
And you
yeah,
go, stop crying, man! Like, come on, what's up, princess? But apparently, he'd break down crying sometimes out of nervousness in
huh.
meetings with the king, and the king was like, "I'm in charge. You do what I tell you." And the king would verbally abuse him until he cried. And then the king would say, "Okay, listen, I'm sorry, buddy. It's just my temper got the better of me." So like you've got this weird friendship between the two.
Right,
But Louis was very controlling and very demanding.
yeah,
So, but he was very manly. Like you
yeah,
read about him, like he went hunting, he fought, he wrestled, he was macho. Whereas in the book, it's like nothing like that. But your
yeah.
story had the best parts. But this, I will admit, this comedy to it that was it's really good.
Oh, thanks. I know when I wrote that. I think it was when I wrote that was about the time we were becoming friends, and I was thinking, I remember thinking while writing that, man, I really hope that the Crin brothers like this one, because you're my resident like French expert, because you're French Canadian, right? And
We
so I was like, I gotta really do it justice. I can't just throw a bunch of crap together, and it can't be fake. It's got to be
funny.
authentically French, even though it's in English.
Yeah, it was. It's hard for uh, Anglo Anglo Saxons. No, because Anglophones just Anglos within Canada. It's hard for Anglo Saxons to really nail France, and I found out on a sales stream of sorts with Brian Meyer over on Thursday that in some ways it seems like we're further away from the Anglosphere than China or Japan
Hmm.
or Russia is. Like we're an entire mystery to you guys.
Right.
And well, I was basically told that to my not to my face exactly, but via one of these streams, and I'm like, we are. It's like, yeah, like what's it like? Like how do the French think of this? How do they feel about that? Okay, like, but see, there's a distance. There's a weird kind of distance, but a lot of people forget we're basically Celts, just with a semi-Latin language.
Right.
And um, but what I noticed in that story was it was yeah, you did capture the essence and the element that is French, but it was also so hilarious. It just I sorry. It was a good story. And any listeners should absolutely go find it. But when it comes to Attilius, now I'm really going to want to turn the show over to you, Attilius. So, how'd you get writing him?
So that story, I got the idea for that story, like with most of my stuff. Uh, I've been wanting to write for as long as I can remember. So a lot of this stuff I kind of
Mhm.
developed in my head, and I do have notes somewhere. I actually put together a notebook, and I called it something like "Ye Old Book of Josh's Story Ideas." So that's how I got that story years ago. I was watching the movie Gladiator, and there's that scene where Lucilla talks about how matrons will pay a lot to spend the night with gladiators. And I was like, what if there's a guy who, he's this powerful senator, but he can't, basically can't perform. So he has this gladiator knock his wife up, and that's proved controversial with certain people. They don't really like that part that the guy is basically gets cucked. But It's part of the story. What can you do?
Yeah.
So uh, that's where I got the idea, and then I started putting the character together. Obviously he's got some similarities to Maximus from Gladiator, and that he's a
Yeah.
famous general. And then I didn't really go into it in the story of why he's now a gladiator. I kind of threw some stuff in there about how they thought he was getting too powerful, so they enslaved him. And people think that stuff is fictional and far fetched, but I mean, a lot of that stuff. If you read history books, a lot of that stuff like really happened. These barons, these generals, they get a little too big for their britches, and the church or the king or somebody would come in and knock them down a little bit, take them down a peg or two. Um, so and I don't like Roman history as much as Greek history. I still like it a lot, but I just find if you're building a fantasy world, it's pretty easy to build it off of historical
Yeah.
cultures. And you know, I love I love historical fiction just as much as fantasy, but
Mm.
I don't, to be honest, I'm a little bit lazy and I don't want to do all the research that would go into making an authentic historical fiction novel. So I just transport it into a fantasy world. So that saves me the trouble of having to that way I can mix the eras and stuff, because
Yeah.
you have all different Roman eras. You have the Roman Republic, the Roman Empire. You have all different reforms within the military. Uh, like in Gladiator, they shouldn't have been wearing this lorica segmentata at the time, but that's what everybody thinks of when they think of Rome. So that's the kind of stuff that I like to just throw in there. So yeah, I mean, basically it all started because I was watching Gladiator and I was like, huh, what if this happened? And then this whole fantasy subculture spun out of that. And like I said, it was intended to be a standalone story, but I left the ending open and ended enough that I could build on it. So I started building on it, and at some point, I would like to finish it out. And I know it's been a while, but I still have ideas, and one of these days I'll get around to it.
Okay. Well, if you need any help, let me know.
I appreciate that.
Whether it's history research or to bounce ideas, let me know. I'm game.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the thing about that method is that I found out that it's pretty much how I do it. Like I watch Centurion, or I watch where you find a single quote in history and you go,
Yeah,
I got an idea. Like I'm coming back to Rome and I'm bringing this with me. When Caligula slaps his sword,
right.
uh, he's like, "When are you coming back to Rome?" He says, "Oh, I'm coming back now, and I'm bringing this." That gave me the idea for my Artur story, where he's a conqueror, but it's like what I'll have. He's not Roman at all. He's Irish, basically, and I'll just give him a moment like that. It spun out from that. So, but I'm Celtic, so or Franco-Celt, so that's where my brain's been turning these past few years.
Yeah,
Um, but when it comes to Greece, I find that um, the strange thing about Greek history and Greek, mm, well, it's very easy to build a fantasy world off of ancient Greece and whatnot,
right.
um,
Yeah,
because it's so beautiful, for lack of a better term. It's you look at Greek mythology, you look at Greek figures like Heracles, you look at the Greek cities like Sparta, Athens, Thebes, what Macedonia. It's pre-built, is what I mean. Like it's almost pre-built. You don't need to work too hard. Of course, you should, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
And that's that's something that I have to admit that I think it's partly your stories that got me into writing the Heracleid story and finally publishing my Olympnomachi was because I was terrified of publishing that story. I don't know if because my Olympnomachi was idea of some gods who rebel against the Greek gods, and they establish a Roman pantheon that surrounds Roma Capitolina, Roma Maxima. And the idea is there will be no Jupiter or anything, just a different kind of Roman mythology before pre-Greek Roman contact, that sort of idea. And to kind of do that. But I never would have published any of those stories if it were not for having found your Attilia story.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. You know, and actually, I have Celtic blood too, and actually, this might interest you. I had ancestors go over with William the Conqueror, and help. So I had Norman ancestors. So I do have some French blood in me. It's Norman blood, but it's way back there.
It's still French.
Yeah.
The French manifest destiny and all.
Yeah.
Mine are from La Vallée du Loire.
Okay.
Near Poitou, Anjou, that region. All of my French ancestors are from that region. No other region of France except apparently French ancestors from near the Rhineland, from like the Merovingian period, from what I understand.
Okay.
But then they went down to the south to the Loire region. No other French ancestors. They were all concentrated in that region when they crossed over to Quebec.
Okay.
And whatnot. So, ironically, I've got a lot of Scotch ancestors.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the Loire Valley. That's it. They would not leave those regions. Well, they're all in those regions, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm pretty homogenous.
I was reading a book about Alexander the Great recently, and I didn't know this until I was reading the book. But he went up into, I guess it would have been Germany at the time, but he fought some Germanic, either Germanic tribes or Celtic tribes up there. It was right after he took over.
Yeah, it was just across the Danube, was it?
Yeah, just across the Danube. Yeah, that was one of the first things he did after he took over. Was he went up there and he fought them for some reason or another.
Probably. Well, the thing is, Philip III was a figure of fascination for me for a long time. I don't know why I was more fascinated with him than Alex. I don't know why. For a time, not like these days. I am interested in his son. Always have been, but Philip's very fascinating. Philip, well, the border collapsed when Philip was a young man before he took power. He had to take power to resecure the border, frontier. And the thing is, Alex had to go up north because he had to reestablish and make sure the frontier held. Because if it collapses, what is the term? A historian, I forget which one, but he was really good in one of these documentaries, said that the Alps is like the cork in a bottle. Once they remove, all hell breaks loose.
Right.
It's like that in the north for the Greeks as well. And the Macedonians didn't get the respect they probably deserved because they're the the front line between Greece and the German Celtic barbarians. And the Macedonians never got any respect for the fact that they're protecting Greece. They're better warriors than the Spartans, than the Athenians. They're better than everyone at it. I know you like the Spartans, but the Macedonians were like the champs. Yeah. But the problem is they couldn't get any respect because they were basically half barbarian themselves.
Yeah. And I remember I think that was probably one of the things like driving Alexander was because they didn't get any respect, and he was like, "You will respect my people."
You'll respect me, or else.
Yeah, that's right. As Cartman would say, "You'll respect my authority."
Yeah, and they learned some respect.
Yeah,
it's one of the. Although I will admit, the reason I find Augustus more fascinating is he had less military skills than Alex, but conquered all that area.
Yep.
And that's something I find fascinating. But the thing about Alex was that he was the son of a military genius who he was surrounded by military geniuses. And because a lot of his generals, especially those he inherited from daddy, were really good. They got him his beachhead,
Yep.
over in Anatolia and whatnot in the Persian Empire. But Alex was no slouch himself.
Right.
Like a lot of his maneuvers completely, like utterly destroyed the Persians.
Yep.
And it's now I'm of the view he was assassinated, but and this is apparently unpopular with a lot of people. I don't know what you think of that one.
No, I haven't heard. I mean, obviously, I've heard that theory. I didn't know it was unpopular. I mean, it makes sense because uh, India, he ultimately ended up winning the Hydaspes, but India was basically a disaster for him. You know, everybody wanted to quit. He was the only one who wanted to keep going. He basically forced them to keep going until finally they said, no, we're not going any further. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that he was assassinated because I'm sure he wanted to go back and try again.
He did, and his men were just tired.
Yeah.
They had, well, propaganda works great up until you have to go past it. What I mean is, like,
Yeah, that's right.
you know, like we have to go conquer the Persians, otherwise they'll keep coming in and invading Greece. All right, well, we destroyed the Persians, and then it's like, all right, so now we get to claim everything they have. No, we're gonna go to India. Why would we go to that hole?
Yeah,
Well,
that's
we're
right.
gonna have to go. It's like we have to go there. Why? I said so.
Yeah, that's right.
It doesn't make any sense. Now, and I know I've met some historians where I said Alex's desire to keep conquering makes no sense. You've conquered Persia. That's the end of the civilized world. No need to go further. Well, there's China. They didn't know that.
That's right.
What's the point? And and they had the misfortune of having to cross through India to try to get to China. And that's a term that my former colleagues never like. It's just they had the misfortune. They had to go through India, and nobody goes to India except if they're forced to, and to get to China. But but the interesting thing is China was going through its own kind of revolutions at the time, and was undergoing a great deal of change, which would eventually culminate in the rise of Qin 100 years, I believe, after this. Yeah, because Qin falls, yeah, that's right, around 208 or so. But with Attilius, you've mixed Roman, I believe, the Princeps period, like the Julio-Claudian period, with the you could correct me if you want, with the Greek period, like the Spartans,
Yes.
from the Peloponnesian conflict. What is it, around 400 BC?
Yeah, I think so. It was around, I want to say like 380, maybe. I could be wrong.
Oh yeah, 380. It would be that. That's what I think you told me once. Sorry for forgetting.
No, that's okay. Those dates don't really stick with me. But I think it was around 380 BC.
And one other thing I really like is you have your upper city and low town. Sorry for jumping there, but the thing is, your mixing of the dates allows you to, combine two very rich historic periods, but also two very different yet similar cultures. But the lower and upper city, it's like the Aventine Hill and the Palatine. For those familiar with Rome, the series, which basically the Aventine or the lower city was where us plebs lived, and the Palatine is where all the rich folk get to hobnob and live. And most princeps or emperors wouldn't be caught dead going to the lower city or going through town. Augustus could, because Augustus liked his common folk. He was a Roman for true Romans, but anyone who's seen Rome knows that reference. But most emperors wouldn't really, like, you know what I mean? Like, you must have studied as well. It's like you're never going to see Caligula go downtown to go hang out with the plebs and say, "Hey, how's it going, guys? How's your day going?" Augustus, we have records of him walking through town where people would say, I don't agree with your policy here. Or, remember the guy with the, the parrot or something who says, "Hail Antonius the Conqueror." And you go, Augustus, "I like that. Let me buy that from you." And, like, there was another one the next day, and, Augustus goes, you're gonna have to share the coins to two different guys who train the parrots. But see, not every emperor is like that. But with your story, it takes place. The impression I almost get is something like Nero's reign, or like you could correct me. Like, is it like around that kind of time, or like earlier or later?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about Nero. Um, I mean, I wasn't thinking about anybody in particular, but it kind of
Oh,
worked out that way. You know,
okay.
that's kind of how like a scheming. I mean, obviously Nero was crazy, but like maybe less crazy, but still just as devious and as much
Mm.
of a schemer and stuff.
So someone probably more like um, either Claudius or Caligula or something.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you've got, of course, your Maximus type character, Attilius, who, um, when it comes to Attilius, uh, I will ask, what did you enjoy writing the character? Like, what did you enjoy about him?
I enjoyed his honor. Um, I enjoyed how uh, he's capable warrior. I enjoyed how he's intelligent and smart and a tactician. I enjoyed how he doesn't put up with any nonsense. You know, like at the beginning, the woman's kind of giving him grief, and he's like, basically, grow up.
Attilius.
Just
Yeah,
so,
he tells her, grow up. I'm leaving.
yeah, yeah. So I enjoyed that part. You know, and kind of, I mean, not all my characters are like that, but those are the kind of characters I like the stoic, no nonsense, capable characters. You know, I have a hard time, and Lord knows I've tried. I have a hard time writing like bumbling idiot characters. You know, I just have a hard time with that.
Those can be tricky. They can
Yeah,
be fun, but like your French stories showed that you can write them fairly well.
yeah, that's true. I suppose.
That one had a few bumbling fools, and
Let me say, I like it in the bad. I like writing bad guys that way. I don't necessarily like writing heroes that way as like bumbling idiots.
that's fair. I actually get that. Writing heroes who are bumbling can occasionally be fun, but then there's times when it starts to get a little old.
Yeah, especially if it goes against like, uh, let's say that the Disney Star Wars movies. They made that Solo movie, which I'll be perfectly honest, I actually enjoy that. I think that's probably the best of the Disney Star Wars movies. What I don't like is that they turn Han into kind of a bumbling idiot, which he's not. I mean, he's selfish and he's only looking out for him, and he's self-involved and he's cocky, but he can back it up. I mean, he's a
He's
good
confident.
fighter. Yeah, he's confident. He's a good fighter. He's a good gunfighter. He's not this bumbling dummy that they kind of turned him into
And
in the Solo movie.
yeah, what I would have expected for a Solo backstory thing is show him as selfish, have him do a because remember Lando when he first sees him is like, you got a lot of nerve coming here after what you did. So
Yeah,
he has to have betrayed someone or betrayed because Lando has a strict moral code. He
right.
has to have betrayed that code so that Lando's like, I don't like you. Because we got to
Yeah,
bear in mind, Lando doesn't go into the Vader deal willingly. He says, I had no other choice.
right.
He's got billions of lives in his hands. Lando is quite literally being held over a barrel by Vader.
Yep.
And Han was the more selfish of the two starting out. But I'm one of those people, I look at did Han shoot first or second? I'm like, does it matter? Han's the guy who says, I'm not going to start the fight, but I'm going to finish it.
Hmm.
And then he does.
Right.
He, out of the original trilogy, I'd say he's the second most competent character. The most competent character is probably Luke.
Yeah.
Like Luke's the guy who makes the impossible possible. He just defies all expectations.
Yeah.
But Han is right behind him.
Yeah. I mean, even though he wasn't ready, he held his own in a lightsaber duel against Darth Vader, and he only been training for a few
3
weeks.
months or something.
Yeah, I think I looked it up. It's like he's spends like 8 weeks on Dagobah,
Okay,
and it seems like it's no time. The Now obviously this is more like a theory, but the
Mhm.
theory is that time moves more slowly, or is it more slowly? Time moves differently on Dagobah than it does outside of Dagobah because of all the dark side energy. So even though it seems like no time has passed, it's been really like 8 weeks that he's been training with Yoda.
Or could it be that different planets like move around their sun faster or slower?
Yeah, that could be too. Yeah, I mean, obviously this is all conjecture. None of it's explicitly mentioned in the movie, but the point is, to your point about Luke being the most competent, I have to agree with that because again, he holds his own in a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, and the only reason Vader wins is because he's more powerful and controlling the Force.
Yeah, and later Luke proves himself more powerful than Vader.
Yep,
Toys
that's
with
right.
him.
Yep.
But Han, I'm going to be honest. I've pitched the idea to a few people and said I always wish there was a '90s TV series that would follow Han and his son Anakin Solo,
Yeah.
and you don't bring in any of the other Solo kids. Who cares about them? No one can like them. They're little slime balls. But you have Leia as a support character, Luke as a support character, and you just call this series like Han and Son. That would have sold like gangbusters. I don't know what you think of that.
Especially in the '90s. Yep.
Yeah, like, and you cast Harrison Ford in the series, and like you have Han and Son, and you just have Han, Anakin Solo, and Chewie just gallivanting across the galaxy, stopping Darksiders, just and whatnot, and Leia occasionally showing up just to bail them out, or just because she's Han's wife, like she's gonna
Right.
be.
Yeah.
I just think you focus on the solos because Han's one of the most endearing characters.
Absolutely.
And I will admit, my first reaction to episode 7 was sadness because you killed him off. I like Han. You can't kill Han off. Like, I know Harrison Ford doesn't like the role, but the rest of us love the role.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and c'est la vie. What are you going to do? But the thing with Attilius is that he's got that John Wayne swagger that Han has. He, like you said, he's stoic, he's strong, he's masculine, is what he is. He doesn't take nonsense. And he goes into the fight fully prepared to die or to kill his enemy. And to contrast him with one of my characters, Lachlan, I have fight like a berserker or something. There is no self-control in a way. Whereas Attilius has that, he does have a control over himself. And it's something very fascinating and very cool, really, and very cinematic. And I have to admit, I really like Attilius a lot more as a character. And it's something that, now I will ask, with his background, how did Attilius grow up, to become the man we're describing?
I came up with a few different backstories for him, and I kind of scrapped originally. So when the character first started, however many years ago, originally he and the guy who's his owner, whose wife he's in love with, like they all grew up together as like basically they grew up as friends, and that's like the original backstory. And then I kind of scrapped it, and I came up with a couple others. I haven't really settled on one or the other yet.
Yeah.
If I ever, I do think that's one of my personal favorite stories. I think there is a lot that I could add to it to make it more in depth and to make it better. And maybe one of those days I'll do that. Because I mean, there are some things that I kind of leave vague just because, like I said, originally it was supposed to just be a one-off story that's snowballed into something else. So I mean, I think what I probably go with, what I've kind of settled on, is that his dad was maybe not a famous general, but his dad was in the Legion as well, and so that inspired him to join the Legion, and almost like a Philip and Alexander kind of situation, except obviously they're not kings, you know.
And
Um,
they have a better relationship.
right, that's right. Yes.
So, who of in Greek history is your favorite figure? Just real quick.
In actual Greek history, I really like Leonidas from Sparta. I like oh my gosh, what's his name from the Peloponnese? Alcibiades from the Peloponnesian War.
Okay.
I like the guy who, when they were warned that the Persians' arrows would blot out the sun, I like the guy who said, "Then we'll fight in the shade," which is actually a real historical anecdote. Like that actually happened. You know, somebody was talking about how many Persians there were and that their arrows would block out the sun. And the guy goes, "Well, we'll fight in the shade." Like that actually happened. So I like that. I don't know that guy's name, but I like him.
Yeah,
Um, you know, if we're counting Macedonians, I always liked Alexander.
they count.
Yeah. So, pretty, I guess, pretty common vanilla stuff that everybody likes. Everybody who's into history likes Alexander. And um,
I like Philip better.
yeah, you would.
And I guess I also kind of like, uh, well, maybe Heraclitus and Alexios Komnenos. Those two also stand
Mhm.
out to me. They're pretty cool. Um, how's about Romans?
Um, I like Scipio Africanus and what's his name? The guy who beat Attila. I can't remember his name at the moment.
Oh, Aetius.
Yeah, Aetius, Flavius Aetius. Yeah, you just wrote something about him the other day.
He was a
Um,
badass.
yeah, I like Julius Caesar, and I like Mark Antony. Obviously they have their problems, but I like them.
And
Um,
Augustus.
and what's his name? Cincinnatus.
Ah,
I like Cincinnatus also. I respect him for what he did.
what are your thoughts on Augustus?
Uh, huh. Yeah,
Oh,
I like Augustus too. I like uh, how he took what Caesar did and he ran with it. He was basically like, "All right, we're an empire now, and I'm the emperor." And I mean, like you were talking about earlier, he uh, he wasn't like a great military person, but he did accomplish a lot. And
hmm.
so, yeah,
He had a cheat code. Marcus
yeah,
Aurelius.
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
He had a cheat code. I think for me, my favorites will be Scipio Africanus, Aetius, Virgil.
Yeah, Virgil. Yeah.
I love the Aeneid. Sorry, but oh man, my dream is to write an epic poem like the Aeneid. Oof,
Mhm.
that thing is so damn beautiful.
Yeah, I would love to write something uh, like that, or we're talking Homer, but I love the Odyssey.
Oh yeah, I'm
You know,
listening to an audiobook.
what's his Odysseus? Whether he's historical or not, I've always loved Odysseus.
Mm, I love Odysseus. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, me too.
I remember being a kid and seeing the movie version, and where, like this scene that stood out to me as a kid was just when he breaks down crying in front of Calypso, where he's just like, he can't handle it anymore. He breaks down, and that scene always affected me. I was like, shoot, because my dad kind of looked a little like him, so it was like,
Oh,
and I saw
really?
my dad cry once, only once, and it left a mark on me, and with Odysseus seeing that, I think made me flash back to that moment. So it was kind of like, oh, grown men can break down completely.
Was
So
that was that the movie that was on TV?
yeah, '97. It was with Paul.
Yeah, yeah. I remember watching that. It was the same because it came out. around the time as Merlin, right? Like
Yep.
around the time or after Merlin, yeah.
Right before.
Okay, it was right before, yeah. Because I
I know.
remember watching that, and
I know
then of
all the
course,
Hallmark one move
yeah,
fantasies.
yeah. Um, there was another one too, and I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but there was another one. Um, I tell you what I liked, and I haven't watched it in a long time,
Mhm.
and I know it's so wildly off the rails, but that Attila the Hun movie with Gerard Butler as Attila,
That one was off the rails. I
yeah,
saw. I cringed through half of it. Then I ended up cheering at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains and going, "Yeah, get that, kill
yeah,
Attila."
yeah. I remember as a teenager, I thought it was cool, and I watched it as an adult, and I was like, man, this is so insane, but
We need another movie like this.
yeah,
We need a movie where instead it glorifies Aetius and it just says, "Yeah, he was the coolest guy ever."
yeah,
'Cause,
it was,
like he almost like the problem I have is a lot of people try to romanticize Attila or hold him up, and I'm like, fuck that. He had everything. He had an empire. He had he had an infinite army almost. He
yeah,
had a feared reputation. Aetius is told you have to stop him. Okay, with what army? Stop him.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So he gathers together what he can. Podge Roman army, combines it with Visigoths and Frank and whatnot, mostly Franks, and just says, "All right, let's go. Let's go stop it." Attila. And what people forget is Attila was trying to siege a few of the cities in France, well, Gaul, but failed. So, then he has to turn around because he wasn't going to be able to take those cities.
yeah,
And one thing that I would argue a lot with a lot of history profs, and they were like, calm down. Like, obviously, the Pope was what convinced Attila to go back home.
the Pope.
It's like, yeah, that's cute. But no,
That's
actually,
not, yeah, that's not how it worked.
yeah, it's like Aetius and Attila clashed. Now, most of them would say, yeah, Attila kicked his ass. Attila
Yeah,
was crushed, then basically
yeah,
running home with his tail between his legs. And he probably would have gone south and said, like, all right, let's raid into Italy. But, Aetius is showing up right behind him and is going, oh, yeah, try it. And I think Aetius kind of hoped he'd go south so that he could just
right,
bottle him in there and hunt him down at his leisure. But instead, Attila made the correct decision, fled back home, died on the wedding night. But what people forget is Attila was saying, "I'm going to go back. I want another shot,"
yeah. He would have gone back if he hadn't died.
and he would have lost
Yep,
because I know some historians are like, "No, he would have probably won the second time." Not with Aetius.
yeah,
Attila was a one-trick pony. Aetius
yep,
had like all these armies at his disposal. He
yep,
could pick and choose. There's even the theory he let Attila go. Nah, he hunted him. He just couldn't go
yep,
into the Hunnic Empire because it doesn't have the supply lines and the
right.
support. Sorry, well, there's a before and after Catalonian Plains, and I love that battle. Um, so yeah, as you can tell, I'm a fanboy of Aetius as well. Um, there's a battle I would love to see you write, like a fantasy version of the Catalonian Plains.
Yeah, that's crossed my mind too because I used to be one of those who romanticized Attila until I kind of grew up and got wise, you know. Because like I said, I saw that movie as a teenager and I was like, oh, this guy is cool. But then you kind of grow up and you read more about it and you're like, oh, he wasn't that cool.
But Aetius was.
Yeah, Aetius was, yes. Um,
Yeah.
not
Mhm.
Rome related, but I was reading the other day
Mhm.
about this is over in medieval England about Simon de Montfort and his the
Oh yeah.
barons, and I was reading about that, and he talked about like he found out his son was killed, and so he goes, okay, it's time to die, and then he dies, and he's like, thank God, and I was like, that really stuck with me. I was like, I should write something about this.
You should. That like I remember once feeling bad for what is it, Antigonus, the one eye, when he
Mhm.
dies. He's still waiting for his son to make it to him.
Yeah,
And it's like, oh, that hurts. Because I saw a documentary once where it's like, and he waited for his son and was still waiting by the time, like the enemy made it to him, and it's like, oh my gosh, his son would carry the guilt for the rest of his life. Don't make me feel bad for Demetrius, damn it.
Yeah.
Why are you making me feel bad for him and for Antigonus the One-Eye? It's like, oh my gosh, now I feel bad. That's definitely something, like, definitely do go write that. But yeah, like, write that, then write the Attilius follow up.
Yeah,
So,
I got so much stuff in my head that I'm at the point right now. I've got so much stuff in my head that I want to write. I'm kind of crippled by it because I'm like, I want to write a follow up to this, and I want to write this, and I want to write a follow up to that. Like, I got that current serial going, Valley of the Old Gods, and I got to finish that out at some point. I'm a little behind. It's been like 2 or 3 weeks since the last time I wrote anything for that. And of course, there's that Fate of an Empire always hanging over my head, and I do want to finish it. So
the Empire's fate is in your hands.
yeah, it is.
And when you write, I am curious. Do you listen to music or documentaries or anything?
Yeah, I listen to music. I actually have a playlist on Spotify that I listen to when I write. It kind of helps get me in the zone. Although a lot of times, I probably shouldn't say this, but a lot of times I write when I'm at work and I should be working, and then I'm not listening to anything except for the office noise. But yeah, if I'm sitting at home, I have a playlist on Spotify that I put on it's got like some of my favorite movie and video game soundtracks, and it kind of helps get me in the zone.
Which ones in particular?
Stuff from like Braveheart and
Good choice.
I'm gonna list some stuff that I know you don't like, but like Braveheart and Outlander.
Now, hold on.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
The soundtracks are good.
Yeah. As far as there's some TV shows. Well, Outlander's a TV show. I'm trying to think what other movies. Oh, I got some Star Wars stuff on there, of course. And then as far as TV shows, there's Outlander, Black Sails, which I know we've talked about before.
Love that show.
Yeah, it was a good show. I didn't like.
I
thought they did Blackbeard dirty.
They did.
In that show.
I hated that.
Yeah, I hated the way they killed him off. Obviously he was supposed to die, but he should have died the way he died historically, not by being keel hauled.
And the thing with Maynard is his killer is that the guy was an actual badass.
Yeah.
Who, like, I think was partly the inspiration for Norrington, but Maynard is like Blackbeard on steroids, except was for the pride of the British Navy.
Yeah.
But he died a regular Joe. Like his grave is just an unremarkable grave, and it's like, come on, Englishman, like, come on, Britain, honor him.
Yeah,
give him a song.
And actually, apparently, according to family lore, my wife is descended from Blackbeard. So I'm not quite sure how that all connects up. I haven't actually seen the genealogies myself, but that's the family lore, anyways.
Does she have a Blackbeard?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so that is interesting. Well, Blackbeard was someone who was very promiscuous.
Yeah, of course.
Is interesting about it. Most pirates were.
And there's actually in Charleston, South Carolina, there's a tavern that's now a liquor store, but apparently used to be a tavern he would hang out in back in the day.
Just blew my mind.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a pretty neat place.
So there's Black Sail, there's Outlander, there's Braveheart, Star Wars you mentioned. I myself like the Wondrium or Great Courses Plus horror movies. I just listen to horror movies. I put them on. Like, I'll put on a horror movie like on Billy or like from Netflix. Put it on in the background, and while the women are screaming and the men are going, "Oh God, he's dying," I'm basically writing just like, "Oh," and it's like, um, but like, it's like, you've got, "Oh my gosh, is somebody going to go after back for him?" Yep, and you're just typing while people are dying.
Uh,
For some reason, I just find that relaxing and what.
hey man, so that's some people do.
But then there's a Great Courses Plus where they've got their Roman and their Greek history lectures, and that there's music like Stan Bush's "Dare and Touch" from Transformers. There's Star Wars music. So yeah, you're not alone. I need that stuff in the background. Otherwise, I start skipping. I go all over notes or Twitter or whatever, and I just don't pay attention.
Yeah, it helps me focus. I mean, there's a fair amount of classical music on there too.
Yeah, that helps. Beethoven in particular.
Yeah, I have Mozart, Vivaldi,
Good choice.
Grieg. My favorite piece of classical music of all time is Hall of the Mountain King. So that really helps get me in the zone.
I like the Fifth Symphony.
Yeah.
From Beethoven. It feels purple, like, regal. I kind of imagine it. That's what it would be like in like Jesus or Augustus's presence or something. You know what I mean? Like, almost a color purple, like in sound and whatnot. That's that one in the ninth. The Ode to Joy, I really like.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That's a bland choice. Everybody likes that one. But if you had to assign a piece of music, what would you say would be Attilius's theme?
Probably. Let me think.
All of the Mountain Kings?
No, maybe. Man, that's a good question.
I finally got him.
Let's see. As far as a piece of, when I write like those stories, honestly, the thing that gets me in the zone for those stories, and it's not classical music, but the 300 soundtrack. I just love the blending of like the metal music and the orchestra. So when I write like my Greek stand-in stories and my Roman stand-in stories, that's what I really like is the 300 music, particularly the track, the Hot Gates. It's like where the guitar is going crazy. And
okay, I like the Troy soundtrack.
I like that one too. Actually, I do have some tracks from the Troy soundtrack on my writing playlist.
Okay. Real quick, what did you think of that movie?
Of Troy?
Yeah, it had its problems, but I don't think it was so bad.
No, I mean I enjoy watching it. I don't think. Again, I have some issues with it too, but
they needed Zeus and the rest of them in there.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated that they were trying to tell from a more historical perspective, but a lot of it doesn't work without the gods behind it. I mean, I've always enjoyed it, ever since I saw it in theaters. I'm like, well, this is kind of a problem and this is kind of a problem, but, I still enjoy watching it.
It's a good 3-hour popcorn flick.
Yeah, especially the director's cut. The director's cut starts. I don't remember how the theatrical version starts, but the director's cut starts like with this really nice tracking shot of a dog going through a battlefield, and like you can really appreciate the artistry that they put into it a little bit more.
Absolutely. I have to admit, I actually like Paris in that movie. I shouldn't, but I like. He's a human being. Like he's but Hector steals the show.
Yeah.
But but I find the soundtrack was the best part.
Yeah, I think so. I think I like Brad Pitt. I don't know that he was the best Achilles. I thought Sean Bean was good as Odysseus, and I would have loved to. I would love to have seen another movie with him.
The Odyssey.
Yeah, that's right. I would love to have seen a follow up with him as Odysseus trying to get home. Of course, maybe they could. Yeah, they may not have been able to figure out how to make that one without the gods.
Just lean
That one would be absolutely impossible to make without the gods' involvement.
and just put them in there and just lean in.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
Sean Bean should have had like I don't know. He's gotten robbed of a lot of great films and an entire
Yeah.
career that should have been better. Fantastic actor.
Yeah, Troy's like one of the 5 movies that he doesn't in.
Yeah. And actually, I'd say cast a young Sean Bean as Attilius.
Yeah, if I could be so lucky.
Either him or a young Michael Fassbender.
Oh yeah, I like Michael Fassbender. You know, that might have been who I was subconsciously thinking of.
I
You know,
can tell.
because Michael. I mean, you know, it would be hard to deny that there was some Centurion influence in there also. Great, incredibly underrated movie.
Perfect.
Yeah. And Fassbender is great in it. In fact, that might have been the first movie that. No, 300 was the first movie that I saw Fassbender in, and so then I think I watched Centurion. And I was like, man, it's good to see this guy getting some more work. And obviously, he's a much more famous actor now. But you go back and watch his early movies, and you can just see like the star in the making.
I thought Centurion was his best movie ever.
I might.
I've lost track of him though. After that,
I'm honestly, he's been in a lot of stuff. Like he's been in the X-Men movies as Magneto, but Centurion might be better.
yeah. So when it comes to, will there ever be any stories where like we see more of the history of Noveria?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. I mean, I have in my mind like tried to expand beyond just Attilius and like what he's going what goes into him. In fact, and I don't know if you've read it, but in the serial I mentioned earlier, Valley of the Old Gods, like they talk about Noveria, and it's kind of just getting started in that time. And the main character is actually the ancestor of my Spartan stand-in hero, Critus, is actually his ancestor stars in Valley of the Old Gods. So, plug for that if you want to check that out sometime. And that one's kind of inspired.
I've not had the chance to look at.
That one's inspired by actually. That one's inspired by Greek and ancient Israel mythology, ancient Hebrew mythology. So I was watching House of David on Amazon Prime. I should write
I've
something.
never seen that.
It's pretty good, and it's very respectful. Actually, it was. I started watching it somewhat cautiously because you know how modern Hollywood treats Christians in the Bible and stuff, but it's actually very well done. It's very respectful of biblical history, and obviously they have to take some liberties, but they do it in a way that's respectful and makes sense.
It's the history of David.
But yeah, it's the history of David and like how Saul fell from favor and David. It deals with the first season deals with David and Goliath, and then I think they're going to do another season, which I guess will deal more with David's rise to power. Which there's a whole rich history and story in there. The Bible's a great.
Yeah.
What's up?
So, I've never heard of this show. What's it called?
It's called House of David. It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, I'll watch it since you recommended it. Because if you liked it, it must be good. And
what if I like? Wait. What if I said I like Rings of Power? Would you trust me on that one?
Don't
man,
mislead me, Josh.
Oh man, that was
totally end up just watching it and falling for it.
no, don't do it. Don't do it. Please
I
God.
won't. I won't. I won't. I won't. I'm sorry.
Although I
What-
almost want you to watch it just so I can read the enraged articles about how terrible it
oh gosh, you're killing me.
is. I would love to just see you go off on that nonsense.
Oh my gosh, I might just have to do that just to entertain you in particular. Oh my gosh, what was this? Uh, man. And you're in the Valley of the Old Gods. Plug away. Want me to link to that one when I post this on Substack?
Sure, yeah.
I was going to
Since
link to your Fate of an Empire, but I'll also link to that one.
yeah, I'd appreciate that because that one is ongoing. I'm a little slow on it. It's been like 2 weeks, 3 weeks since the last entry, but that one I think it's probably going to be about 10 parts. So
I'm not going to judge because my Heracleid story, it's like once a month. At most, like twice within like 3 weeks apart. So I'm not gonna judge. Dave from Man Behind the Screen was the one who suggested breaking the chapters into 2 or 3 so that I can actually update not just once every month or month and a half. My Heracles story is just so damn slow. It's because I keep getting scared of, oh, I got this detail wrong. So double track back. I gotta, I botched this up. I have to go back. I have to rewrite this, and putting the elves into the Heracles story has me also nervous, and so gotta get that just to say right, and get all the 12 labors correctly. So I write terribly slow, so I'm not going to judge. Your story, well, I'm just looking at here. I'll just look at your in the Valley of the Old Gods, and the details look really good. And so Ardicios is the lead.
Yes.
I love that name. So he's an ancestor of Attilius.
He's an ancestor of Critus from the story you really like with the Lion Guard and stuff. He's that guy's ancestor.
That's cool. I'm gonna definitely have to read your in the Valley of the Old Gods. I'm just looking at the first few paragraphs, and damn, I gotta read this. And the name Ardicios is just that's such a good name. Wish I thought of that.
I workshopped that one for a while because I had a few different names for that character before I settled on that one. And I think I just got done watching Troy when I started that story, if you couldn't tell, with that name. Odysseus was mine.
Everyone loves Odysseus, especially as Sean Bean portrays him.
Well, I mean, he's one of the few, I guess he'd be mythological. I don't know if there's any historical confirmation for his existence, but I mean, he kind of is one of the few who gets a somewhat happy ending. He's reunited with his wife. He gets to take his kingdom back over. He doesn't get home, and his wife doesn't murder him, so she can be with her lover. That kind of thing.
Her lover, yeah. Although in Clytemnestra's defense, her husband did murder her daughter.
That's true. It's not like she didn't have a good reason.
That couple was all messed up.
Yeah.
Agamemnon's not exactly a nice guy. She's not
And then
exactly.
Wasn't she murdered by her other daughter?
Yeah, who was
she
daddy's little girl. That family was all screwed up.
Yeah.
And then Helen is later hung from a tree by Menelaus's sons, so they could try to claim the throne. But I think it's, what is it? Helen's nephew, which is Clytemnestra, and Agamemnon's son marries Helen's daughter and takes the throne of Sparta. Like, jeez, they needed therapy. That entire family needed therapy. But I will admit, I kind of feel bad for Helen. Um,
Yeah.
you make a stupid decision, sure, but like, I don't know if it warrants getting hung from a tree.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, from what I understand, Menelaus forgives her, and they go back home and they're relatively happy, at least for a little bit.
well, I'm someone who I'm never too sure about Menelaus and Agamemnon, but I side more with the Trojans. Um,
Well, yeah, Agamemnon, he's a piece of work. I always felt like Menelaus got kind of a bad rep, but maybe he
he kind
deserved
of
it.
did. Oh, sorry, friend. He kind of did,
I was,
but
yeah,
um, I guess I just view it as your wife stepped down. You just give up at this point. Like, there's no, she's not, doesn't want you. Just leave it be. It's one of those, like Achilles says in the Troy movie. What business of mine if a man can't keep his wife?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but on the other hand, I do understand that, like, I've been cheated on in a relationship, so it's like I get the rage and the,
yeah,
I want to punch her out almost because like you don't do that to me. I'm humiliated here. So I actually understand him on a certain level. But on the other hand,
right,
he had kids outside the marriage, so it's like this is a weird, complicated issue. I wish I didn't have to deal with. No, but Odysseus is the one I like because he steps up. He's like, all right, well, how are we going to deal with this Troy problem? I'll tell you all how we're going to do it. And
yeah,
he's the man who gets the job done.
yeah.
But Sean Bean just the best portrayal, just because it's just I like the one line. You have your sword.
You,
I have my
my
tricks.
tricks. Yeah, yeah,
We play with the gifts the gods give us. But the funny thing is, his greatest trick is not that he's playing it on Patroclus. He's playing tricks on Achilles to
yeah,
lure him in.
yeah.
And he nails it. And it's like, damn, he's so sneaky and sly about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Achilles misses that. He doesn't understand that the ultimate trick is on him by going through Patroclus.
Yeah, and because it's like this war will, like he tries like 3 times. What is it? The first one's like they say Hector is the best soldier
Yeah,
in the whole world. You have Achilles. He's drinking his wine. Looking like, yeah, no. And
no,
then it's my wife would feel much better if you were there fighting by my side. Like, do it for me, bro. Then there's this war will never be forgotten.
yeah. Then he goes right to his vanity, and that's it. That does it.
And that's Sean Bean needs more work. He needs more acting gigs. He's too good.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I was sad. I mean, I was sad and glad when he was cast in Game of Thrones, but I was sad because I knew he wasn't going to see the end of the first season.
yeah, he was the best part. After that, I didn't want to watch anymore. And I just lost.
Yeah, and that was, and obviously there's many problems with
Game of Thrones.
George R. R. Martin that you've talked about endlessly. But
Yeah,
one of those, when you kill off beloved characters for shock value, you better have other characters to take their place, and he doesn't. I mean, by the time you get to the third or fourth book, he's killed off all the interesting characters, and you're like, I don't really care about anybody who's left.
yeah. No, see, that was my biggest problem. It's because, like, and I don't like him going on too much. I actually don't like writing those essays about him because at my core, I'm like, I don't, like, I like a lot of the ideas in the first book. I like Robert Baratheon. I like Eddard Stark well, in the show more than the book, because the book he's boring. But in the show, I like him because it's Sean Bean. But like, you killed off the 2 characters who are the most exciting, the most interesting. I don't really care about anyone else. I guess Robb Stark's kind of interesting, but it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna kill him off, aren't you? Oh yeah, saw that one coming.
Sure enough, sure does. Yeah.
Well, who's Theon, Sansa, what's his name? Tyrion, Jon Snow. Please, I got better.
Tyrion was interesting there for a little bit, but then I haven't read the last book that's come out, A Dance with Dragons. I read all the others.
I read part of it, then lost interest. I was so bored.
Yeah, the fourth book was so boring, and that's why I haven't read the fifth one yet. But also because I know he's not going to finish it, so it's kind of like, why bother?
I have to admit, I read the first one, then I read the second one, and I was going, I know who's going to die. And well, I knew by the halfway through the first book, I was like, this character's going to die, this character's going to die, and this character's going to die. Second one, oh yeah, I'm right. Third one, oh come on, bro, surprise me.
Yeah,
And it might sound weird, but I think the greatest subversion would have been something like Tywin actually dying and all hell breaking loose.
yeah,
I would have said, huh, didn't see that one coming. But
yeah.
instead, it's everything goes without a hitch, and it's like, yeah, I saw it coming. But that's the thing. It's like, it might sound weird, but I find the traditional storytelling styles in traditional stories more shocking.
Right.
You know, like it takes you more by surprise. Like when Attilia survives at the end and like it's escorted off, I was surprised by that. I went, cool. I like that. He contradicted the Gladiator ending.
Yeah.
Okay, like that gets a star and a half. You surprised me. You look at like, I don't know. I'm listening to the audiobook of The Odyssey for the first time in years. Because when I looked at this story as a kid, it was in French. You have to understand, like there was a different feel because it's in French. It's not English. So I'm listening to an English audiobook of this thing on YouTube, and I'm actually startled by a lot. And I'm going, wow, I forgot about this detail or that detail. I really like this story. And you know, you're carried off on a quest in a way and on a great journey. And this is something you miss. But modern writers, at least with the mainstream media, it's like, oh, we're having, you know, you're gonna do like with Martin. All right, I killed off Ned Stark. I killed off Sean Bean's character. I've got all these other characters. I'll just kill them all. Now you guys have to settle for, what is it? The girl with the dragons, the guy up in the north. No one actually cares about those characters. They're boring.
Yeah.
People would fast forward through their scenes to get back to, like, I don't know, like the war between the Lannisters and the Starks. Everything else is superfluous. No one actually cares about that stuff. And then, you know, and I know because I'd asked my college friends who actually liked the show, what do you like? Well, I like the Lannisters and the Starks fighting. Okay. And I was like, and they're like, I know you don't like the show, but this is what I want to do. And then, of course, I'd get invited over, and the only time I could hang out with some friends was when they were watching the show. So I had to sit through it. And honestly, they were like, you know, a few times they're like doing this, and it's just, what are you doing, guys? Oh, I'm skipping the scenes. Why? Well, I want to get to Stark and Lannister. I don't care about the rest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Jon Snow is such a dull character, and Daenerys is so boring. And she's everybody when that show was out and everybody was glazing her. I was like, she's so boring. Such a there's nothing to her. She's just like, wow, I want my dragons. Wow, I want the throne. Wow.
And my thing was, the problem was, how many chapters do I have to sit through where she's like, oh, this guy's so hot. And I'm going, oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, you're going to boink him, and then you're going to get bored of him.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, that's exactly what you did. And this girl's in charge of an entire empire. Oh my gosh, and it's like, oh, well, we're never going to let her get to Westeros. Oh, fuck. You know, you kind of go, why is this here? And,
yeah, that storyline gets dragged out way too long.
And that's the problem. Like, you've got, this is something which I think this is a contrast, and I'll actually glaze your stories, to use that term, over Martin's, in that one strength of yours is that, you know, like with Martin, I find I read his stories, and I'm like, well, I like the Brackens and the Blackwoods, is it? Or the Darkwoods? Something like that. You know, these two baronial families that hate each other. And I go, oh, I find that interesting. Why do they hate each other? I don't remember. But, you know, like, I thought it was interesting at the time. And I know his baronial history is, you know, when he builds those, they're pretty good. But it's the larger scale stuff, which is boring as hell. but he
Right.
stretches these things out till finally you just go, I don't care. Whereas
Yeah.
you, it's these very short stories. You don't like, but I want it to be longer. Like that's the difference. Martin, I'm like, can it be shorter? I don't like this. But
Right.
with you, it's like it's so short, but I'm going, damn thing out. Why is it so
it's
short?
it's just because I'm lazy, man. Uh, I tried I try to. I mean, I'm honestly jealous of people like you and Dave, the man behind the screen, and Ian Dunmore. I mean, you guys like whip up these crazy, like involved, long stories like it's nothing. And for me, I have to like battle and fight for every single word. Then it's like a 5 minute read, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I've been typing forever. And it's only 5 minutes long. Um,
Hey,
so I would love to have that ability to be more verbose and um, I just, I guess maybe that's the the David Gemmell influence. I guess is just get straight to the point and not waste a bunch of time on unnecessary stuff.
Gemmell was good. I'm still reading through Legend though. I've been reading through it forever. I'm
It's
at like
not.
five or
It's
six.
not. It's really not his best book. It's one of his most popular, but it's really not. It's not one of my favorites. There are other books featuring Druss that are a lot better, like the First Chronicles of Druss the Legend, which is basically his origin story, is a lot better. The Legend of Deathwalker is a lot better. Legend is just not really one of his best books, in my opinion.
It's still good. It's just I've been, how life is,
Yeah,
and with all the writing, it's just sometimes hard to find time.
right.
And on top of that, I've had pretty much 2 commissioned essays this week, which stole my time from me like a thief. I want my
Yeah.
time, but like a thief, it's not that he's not coming back.
Well, you were talking about your love for the Aeneid earlier. Uh, Gemmel's got a trilogy. It's the Troy trilogy, and Aeneas is the main character. So you might want to check it out. You would
Definitely.
probably really, you would probably really like it. And even that's kind of an influence on my Greek and Roman inspired stories. So
What we need is a Aeneas inspired fantasy story uh, by Josh Tatter. It doesn't have
you
to
never,
be the actual Greek mythology. It could be your universe, and just have fun with it and world
yeah,
build.
yeah.
And take us on that Odyssey or Aeneid style journey. And I think that when it comes to whipping up a large story like that, is that on my end, I got to stop whipping them up because I've got too many projects I'm currently working.
Yeah,
But so I've trapped myself, and now I'm having to finish a bunch of stories. But I think that when it comes to that, how do I put it? Ian Dunmore is truly talented at it. Same with Dave. With me, a lot of it is also um, like today on the walk with Dan, because we always go out into the woods when when we've got the time to walk the dog, because we have to walk him at least once a day because he goes berserk. We usually discuss our stories on those walks, and today was the subject of Crown of Blood and whatnot, or part two, I mean. And the thing is, a lot of the stories I write and whatnot would probably be either dropped or a lot shorter if it wasn't for these walks where Dan and I will just bounce back and forth and go, all right, this character needs to do that or that character. Even if Dan's not writing the story, often I consult with him, and it's like bouncing the ball,
right.
like a dodgeball or something.
Yeah,
And it'll be like, oh, okay. What about this? Why doesn't this character do that? Well, I need him to do this. Do you need him to do that, or does the character need to do that? Oh, good point. And you get that outside perspective. Then it's, what about this detail? And then Dan goes, I like this detail. oh right, and that detail could lead to this, and thus you got lore being built, and you got a new character, a
Yeah,
new challenger that has arisen, and you're going. Before you know it, you have half the story in your head. Then you arrive home, and you're like, "Wait, why did I write it about this one like sideshow?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you know how it is. But the thing is, I'm lucky in that I've got Daniel to bounce off of. Not every writer has a family member they're right next to almost that they could just ping pong with about the story development and the characters and whatnot. So that's where I'm lucky in that regard. And the division of labor is something I'm immensely grateful for.
Right.
Uh, but Ian consults a lot with Eric Falden.
That's
Uh,
true. Yeah, because they're best buddies, I think.
yeah, and um, but with you, you're I would say you're in a situation where I don't know if you have that. So you're having to work on your own like Gamel and come up with it all. So like, and not to mention your stories might be short, but people want them to be longer.
Yeah.
And um, and I think that how do I put it? There's a richness to them. And look at it this way, at least for some of us, when I'm reading Gamel, I'm also thinking, oh, I see where Josh gets the influence and
Uh,
whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'd argue you're kind of the David Gemmell of Substakia.
Oh, well, that's just about the highest compliment anybody could ever say. Because you know how much I love David Gemmell. Uh, also, although I've been reading, thanks to Alexandra, I've been reading The Lions of Al Rassan by Guy Gavriel Kay. So now I've got a new goal is to be as good as him.
Ooh, cool. Um, so I will ask, out of curiosity, is there a novel in the works down the road?
Uh, I hope to eventually. I, I'm kind of bouncing between a couple. There was that, um, you know, uh, one of one of the things that a lot of people love is I write quite a few westerns, and people love that stuff. And so I have my original one, Everbrooks and the Midnight Riders. I wrote that a couple years ago on Substack, and it's very short. And so I've been working on expanding it to turn it into a novella throughout this year. I've made quite a bit of progress on that.
Good.
But now I'm thinking of releasing, because I got so many short stories. I'd like to put together a short story collection, and then maybe that will expand into. I mean, I would love to write a novel. I go to the bookstore and I see all these ugly, lame fantasy books, and I'm like, man, these people can do it. I can certainly do it. And who knows if they're using AI, how they're getting it done. But I'm like, I would love to see, this epic book by Josh Tatter on the bookshelves one of these days.
It'll
So
happen.
I just don't know that currently I have the discipline to sit down and do that. I think I've always felt like I've been more of a short story writer. Like Robert E. Howard, he only wrote one novel, but he wrote a ton of short stories.
He's a
I kind of
master.
feel like maybe that's my that would be my path. Although the guy who wrote the Witcher books, Sapkowski, he wrote a bunch of short stories, and then he eventually developed a series of novels. So maybe I could do that too.
I'll be honest. I'm starting to wind down the English. Uh, a lot of my English books where I'm just going to finish them all, but then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to only write outside, like, because when I say finish them all, I mean that beast of mine, Gemstone,
Yeah.
Darkspire. I'm going to finish that stuff. I'm going to finish the Archweir book, the Sword of the Western Seas. I'm going to finish all the books I'm currently working on. Then I'd like to only write French novels for a bit and
Mm-hmm.
write short stories. So I do understand. Like, it's not that I don't want to ever write English novels again. I will definitely write more, but it's just I want to go through like next year a brief repos of just English short stories. So I do understand. Um, there's a joy in writing these shorter pieces where you can get more to the point, and if you have a collection, there's all these different stories and whatnot. And Robert E. Howard is definitely a motivation because he was a master.
Yeah.
He was not like his short stories feel like full-length novels, and you've definitely got that edge to you. I have to admit, I kind of want to aspire after that and write some great short stories. But I think, that it might be interesting if you were to try writing your own Conan or Dross or something. I don't know if you've ever given that any thought.
Yeah, I have. Obviously, the closest I've come to Conan so far is my satirical character Sliferic the Strongish. He's like the closest I've come to Conan.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, which I was great. I'm always overjoyed when you comment about how much you like my stuff. That's really satisfying for me. Uh, it means a lot to me.
Welcome.
But I mean, I would say you can see a little bit of a Conan influence even in some of the stuff, like Attilius, maybe like a tiny bit, or the other guy, Critus. He's got a little bit of Conan in him. I'm not. Obviously, I've read Conan stuff and I've seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and stuff. I'm not as well read on that as I probably should be.
I think. I hope you don't mind if advice is a dangerous thing to offer, as Tolkien would put it. Far be it for me to give you any sort of advice. I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean, like, in a lot of ways, you're further along in life than I am, wife, kids, and whatnot. But I'll try giving some if you want. I'd say read a little Howard. His Hour of the Dragon is a masterpiece, which is the American Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
In my view, it is the greatest American novel ever written. And it is tender, it is beautiful, it is charming, and it is courageous, and it puts a fire in a man's chest. But I think Howard arrived at the Hour of the Dragon, this book that is the equal of the Lord of the Rings. And I say that as I'm a fanboy of Tolkien.
Yeah.
But Howard was his equal. No ifs, ands, or buts. But he arrived there through short stories. And you want to write a novel, you've got your fantastic Western novella you're writing. I think it might be good if you, like, I love Attilius, but it might be good if you go for, while you're trying to work your way through his story to finish it, maybe try working with one consistent heroic sword and sorcery or epic short story fantasy stuff lead, a consistent lead, your own Odysseus or something.
Yeah.
And you work with him for like 50 to 100 short stories or something, like Howard did with Conan. You focus on this guy and you make him the biggest badass you could ever make him. And maybe you try to, like, I'm not telling you how to write or something. You obviously can. You work with this character and you build him up, and before you know it, you'll have like 20 or 50 anthologies or something.
You know that, and I'll never forget how much of a fan you are not of that story with the two elves. But,
now, I actually came around to it.
Honestly, there's something about it. I mean, it's better than it used to be, I think, but there's something about it that I'm not particularly a fan of either, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But like, one of those elves was supposed to be that character. I only wrote one story about him, and I haven't written anything else about him. So I am trying to kind of do exactly what you're saying. Find a character that I can just keep writing and writing about. Instead of these characters, it's like a one off or a one time thing.
Make him Greek
Yeah, yeah,
because you have Odysseus, you have Attilius. You like your Greek history and your Greek myths. Make him kind of Greekish.
hmm
Um, Maybe that's the way because like you could have maybe your elf character can show up as a friend. That
yeah.
way you include him, but like maybe I don't know. This has become brainstorming all of a sudden. I don't know how, but shows
Hey, I
on
need it. I need all the help I can get.
well, and I'm a fan, so um, hopefully this. If I'm of any service, I'm happy. But maybe a Greek hero is in order. Someone
Yeah,
who, because like Conan comes from what's essentially the boondocks, the
yeah.
barbarian lands. Maybe here it's not the barbarian lands, but like a Macedonian who is half barbaric, half Scythian.
That's a good idea.
I'm just spitballing and
I
throwing.
think you might have given me something to work with there.
I don't know. I feel like I'm throwing darts because I am. But if he's Greek, you can like you you know you've got a depth of knowledge of the history, and that could really make things really interesting. You'd be able to establish a little more lore on Noveria, which could help also because you've built so much lore already into that. And excuse me. And my advice would be maybe set it after Attilius or before or something. So
Yeah.
You've got more freedom of like arm length. I don't know if
Yeah,
that makes
maybe something like after the empire falls and this guy's like trying to find his place in the world or something like that.
there's an idea. Or
Yeah,
even what if the empire is still standing
yeah.
and this
Maybe
guy's
yeah,
wandering around?
yeah,
And I don't know, like it could fall and you got him running around trying to figure himself out. But it'd be interesting if he's, like I said, Greek or something, since that gets your creative
yeah.
fire going. I've noticed a lot of your stories are Greek. It's either that or make them French and just make them the greatest thing ever.
Hey, I would like I said before, I would love to write something on the level of the Three Musketeers. And actually, there's a German writer, Oliver Potch. He wrote The Hangman's Daughter. I don't know if you've heard of that. He was
No.
popular a few years ago, but it's actually a whole series, and they're okay. But he's got a couple of books called The Black Musketeers, and it's basically a German fantasy version of the Three Musketeers,
Oh
and
dear.
it's actually pretty good. I like it. I like it better than the books from the Hangman's Daughter series that I've read. So, but I would love to write. You know, obviously, as American as it gets, and we make fun of you French, but I do have an affinity for French culture. You know, Musketeers, uh, the Beasts of Gévaudan, that kind of stuff. I do have an affinity for that stuff. So I would love to write something on that level one of these days.
Yeah. What a coincidence! I have an affinity for French culture too. So
Yeah. What a shock! What a shock!
why c'est un grand choc.
Uh,
But yeah, and that's the thing in your stories. You have an affinity for French culture, for Greek culture, and that's a duh to anyone listening because your stories. Um, like I said, but hell, even if you write a series of short stories about three guys running around like Three Musketeers style, that'd probably fit with your style.
yeah.
Short stories
You
before
know,
you get to a novel.
yeah. That's yeah. And of course, I have an affinity for the Celts as well, being the descendant of Celts myself. You know, like listening to the Braveheart soundtrack or the Outlander soundtrack, man, that sets my blood on fire.
I should
I can
listen
just
to
picture myself with a tartan and a basket hilloed claymore slaughtering some redcoats.
it. um, I can see it. But yeah, like I said, hopefully this will help. And if it leads to some great stories, then all the better because I'll read them. Um, and I'll definitely be reading that those news stories of yours. Um, although I will confess, like I said, I have the vested interest in pushing you to write a continuous series of stories because I like stories that are connected directly.
Yeah.
Um, and I like your stories. So for me, I get to read either something like a Greek Conan or something, or these three musketeers running around trying to solve three fantasy musketeers running around solving problems or causing problems or
Yeah.
trying to entice women with cheese.
There you go.
And like I said, maybe the key is to try short stories and master them. And well, not to say you haven't, but or already mastered them, but like um, use that like a building block
Right.
towards
Right.
novels, which is doing the journey what I'm doing backwards because I'm starting off with these large novels and trying to work my way to short stories. So yeah, like in my case, I'm working backwards. You're working forward, which is probably how it should be done. um, but actually, I will ask, who's your favorite figure in French history?
Uh, that's a good question, and I don't know. I'm prepared to give an answer for that one.
Oh,
Um, I'd have to think about that one.
okay.
Um, well, Napoleon is the easy answer.
Charlemagne.
Napoleon. Huh.
I think,
Uh, say what?
I think for me it'd be Charlemagne and Jeanne d'Arc.
Oh yeah, Charlemagne. Yeah, Charlemagne, of course. Um, and yeah, uh, actually, and my little one, my son, my youngest son, he's a big fan of Joan of Arc also. Um,
He's
he
good
was
too.
not he was not happy when he found out what happened to her.
Oh,
But yeah, obviously her as well. Um, yeah,
I
I mean,
would.
I guess that'd be the easy answer for me would be Napoleon and Charlemagne and Joan of Arc. I always forget about Charlemagne because he's so far back, but
He's
yeah,
good.
he was definitely a heck of a guy.
Ooh,
Charles Martel also. I always like Charles
ooh.
Martel. Yeah,
Maybe that's what you need. Charles Martel
yeah,
figure in your world to turn back the infidels.
yeah. Yeah, he's definitely. Whenever I read about him and his exploits, that sets my blood on fire too.
Oh
Um,
yeah, they said any man's blood on fire. La Bataille de Toul. Uh, that, like to have been there, to have been
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I remember seeing this one documentary that dramatized a bit of it. The Dark Ages, I think, and you've got his men throwing him on their shields and just cheering him because they're like, you know, it's like, yeah, I wish I was there. But as to your younger son, well, he's got good taste, and Jeanne is a figure that us French still cry over. There's still songs being made of her
yeah,
because our people never got over her passing.
yeah,
Uh, she was France for a brief time,
yeah.
and yeah, but Mark Twain's novel about her is the best novel or story about her. It's beautiful stuff, but I
Mhm.
can't read it very often because it just makes me want to weep.
Oh man.
What, you read it?
No, I haven't, but I think I might now.
It's something you do read with your kids, but it's something that the last like 200 pages of just they rip your heart out.
Mhm.
Because the main character, the narrator, is someone who's in love with her.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
it's unrequited, but he's following her around because he loves her.
Yeah,
He's recounting her story, and he's one of her best friends. But at one point in the narrative, he's like, "I love this other girl," but you could tell no, it's Jeanne. He's still pining after.
yeah.
And the story is basically he's a character who, at 93 years old, still is in love with that 19-year-old girl. And the last few chapters are basically him just saying, yeah, that was it for my life after that.
Mm.
You're like, man, like,
Oh man.
but it's tragic because the last few chapters are, leading up to her cremation. Well, I say cremation, but her being burnt at the stake by the
Yeah.
Burgundians and the English. And you've got Twain read all the stories, and it's just the details very good, but it's like you're there basically, and it's tragic. And Louis de Conte is his character, but his character Louis is, like imagine writing about someone who's going to die horribly,
Yeah.
and from the perspective of someone in love with that person, that's going to strongly affect your judgment and what you think. I first read the story when I was 11, and I broke down weeping like a baby. And it was the first English novel that really got me like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but I've got a French copy now, and I'd rather read it in French because it affects me more strongly because it's French.
Right.
But that might be why I imitate Mark Twain's writing style in English, because
yeah, when I was a younger man, a young lad myself, I was obsessed with Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. I wanted to just reading Huckleberry Finn made me just want to hop on a raft and go down the Mississippi and get all sorts of mischief.
Yeah, but take my word for it, the Mark Twain Jeanne d'Arc novel is far more. It's his best work.
Okay.
But it's like the battle chapters, like they'll excite you. You're going to be like, "Oh, I'm in the battle, yay!" But then when you get to the last 100 pages or so, like I said, it's just you're choked up, and it's like, frick.
Yeah, I might definitely have to check this out then.
All right. It's something maybe you do read with your kid, though. He might enjoy it too. But it's heart-wrenching. But yeah, if it helps with a connected character and whatnot, I hope this podcast was somewhat useful for that. We kind of went all over the place.
Yeah.
But like I said, maybe the next time we do this, maybe you'll have written such a character, and we can, examine that character in depth.
Maybe you've definitely given me some good ideas. So
okay, good.
yeah, no, I've got the old noggin is working.
Okay, good.
If you see smoke coming out of my ears, it's because I'm brainstorming. Well,
or I pissed you off.
No, only if you want to talk trash about the Spartans again.
No, I'm not brave enough
Yeah.
to do that. And I don't really want to fight and quarrel.
No, me neither.
Over that, because I don't really have a dog in the fight. And, like that last stand at Thermopylae is awesome. So I can never trash talk that. They saved Greece.
Yeah.
Which is all that matters. And I'll be honest, I've been reading up about the Third Macedonian War again, and I really love that one where Rome conquers Greece. I love that conflict.
Yeah.
Lucius Scipio is one of the most underrated generals in history.
Mm-hmm.
The dude just utterly trashed the Macedonian Empire and the Seleucid Empire, like 1, 2, 3, right after his brother trashed Carthage.
Yeah.
Like the fact historians are like, what does Lucius matter? The dude conquered the Middle East and Greece.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know Scipio's Africanus is cooler, but like his younger brother was pretty damn cool too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was always sad to me that Alexander's empire just fell apart after he died. All that work and all that effort, all that blood that was spilled, and it's just gone like that.
Yeah. Is that the fate of Noveria?
Maybe. I guess we'll find out someday. Maybe
next
maybe a year or 10 years. We'll see.
Okay.
Maybe next week.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But the important thing is, the Spartans have never looked better than in your stories.
Oh,
And
thank you.
no problem, it's the truth. And the um, the thing is, hopefully, we'll soon see a new hero arise under your pen. And well, um, I'll be frank, I'm not the biggest Western guy, so I'm not too much into westerns, as some of my
Mhm.
friends are horrified to find out. They keep trying to push me their Western stories, and I'm going, eh. But your fantasy stories will always entertain and bedazzle me. So, um, like I said, after this, I gotta finish one quick Lord of the Rings essay for one friend who's commissioned it
Okay.
from, and I'm gonna just read Odysseus' story because I just want to read that.
Yeah, that would mean a lot to me to get your thoughts on it. But I understand. I don't know what time it is there, but
Let me see. It's Eastern Standard Time here. Ooh, time's flown by. Yeah, so we'll wrap it up. Um, any last thoughts?
no, just that I really appreciate you having me on. It's great to have this conversation. Um,
Yeah.
and
We'll have to have you on again.
yeah, no, I'm glad to know you. I'm glad that we're pals and we're not generally not at odds with each other. I was
Well,
really when we had that big argument about the Spartans versus the Romans, I was legitimately worried that that was going to be the end of our friendship. So I'm
no,
glad.
I ended up then looking in and I went, I guess I was wrong on this one. Okay. Well, time to
uh,
back off and just admit I'm wrong. And I even thought, oh, I don't want to lose the friendship, not over this. And, like, then I went, okay, well, I'm wrong. Admit it, apologize, move on.
yeah, I just want to say, you've given me a lot of compliments, but you know, I do read. I do read a lot of your stuff. I read your fiction, and like I said, it's I'm amazed by the detail and the depth and the history that goes into your worlds. And although, again, those hour-long read times are intimidating and they make my head spin, but man, I do love your essays because you talk about a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily like. You were talking about Oberyn versus Mountain as a analog to Wesley and Inigo, and I'd never thought about that before, but it does kind of make sense when you think about it. So, I mean, you do bring up stuff in movies or books that I've read and I hadn't thought about. Uh, so, I do want to just compliment
I,
your essays and your analytical abilities. You really do deep dive into stuff, and it does make me think about things in a different way.
well, just for one other thing about the semi fight we had a few years ago, both Spartans and Romans. Um, my I have an affection for the Romans, so I
Yeah.
felt defensive of them. But you then delve into the Spartans and you go, and you laid out the timeline so perfectly, and then I had to Google that, look into deeper, and skim for a quick buck and go, yeah, Josh is right, and that's why I ended up going. All right, you're right, bro. I'm going to apologize, back off. So when I say back off, apologize, and move on, I don't mean dismissive. I mean,
Right.
all right. And
Right.
honestly, after that, I was like, whew, I'm so glad. No, I looked the stuff up and I didn't let the temper get the better, that Celtic temper. And I looked at and I went, give it to Josh, concede, and like, yeah, promote him and leave it be. And honestly, I'm grateful for the friendship, and I that's something I'm glad, and I can say I'm very grateful that I had the. I'm not trying to brag. I just mean I had the presence of mind to go, let's Google his dates, and then to start looking into what you were telling me, and then go, yeah, okay, and because of that, I had to calm down, and I went, oh yeah, yeah, Josh is nailing it here, and
Well, I mean, I kind of did the same thing. I was like, man, this is getting out of hand. It's not really worth it. And in the end, the Romans won. They conquered Greece, and that in the end, that's all that really matters.
But the thing is, it was after the time the Spartans had long since stopped being the mythical
Yeah,
Spartans.
that
And
that was that was kind of my point.
yeah, and you're
But
right.
I've grown up like you have an affinity for Rome, and I do too. I just happen to have more of an affinity for Greeks. So my own personal bias was getting in the way.
No, but like you were right. So just take the damn praise.
All right. I was right. I was right, and you were wrong. How about that?
Precisely. And what
Yeah.
ended up happening is I had to admit it. And I was happy to. Honestly, like the friendship's worth more than some ego match.
Well,
Um,
here's something. Uh, could the Romans have beaten Alexander?
that could they have?
Like could Rome in its prime have beaten Alexander in his prime?
Okay. Let me think. Who's the commander of the Romans, though? If
Yeah,
it's
you get to pick.
okay, let me think.
Let's say it was what's it, Lucius Scipio.
I don't think Lucius. I really like him, but no. Alex. Um, I'd say Scipio Africanus might have a good shot. He was brilliant. Um, the only three commanders I can think of who might have a good shot are Caesar, Agrippa, or Scipio. Let me think.
I would almost think maybe Caesar could do it. If anybody could do it, maybe
But
Caesar.
Caesar. Yeah, it might be him. Agrippa is just Agrippa had a knack for like just seizing victory from out of nowhere.
Right.
Like like his Sicilian campaign. Yeah, I know there was bad weather. The first time there's no chance, but the second time, bad weather struck and he still grabbed that victory from Pompey. But Caesar might be the best shot the Romans have because his legions were more advanced than Scipio's.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
I don't.
yeah, I know you're trying to wrap things up, and I'll
But
delay it too much longer. But
no,
I
it's
mean,
fun.
the thing with Alexander is his infantry was basically just to hold the enemy infantry in place while his cavalry just savaged them from the flanks.
Yeah,
So the Romans would have to have a counter for that.
yeah. I think the. Well, okay. Let's see. Um, I'm just thinking about it. I don't know about Scipio Africanus. He was a crafty devil. I don't know if that makes sense, but Caesar would probably have them dig through the night or like build something up during the night. And Alesia is still a wonder to think about. Alesi, but Caesar could get cocky at times.
Yeah.
If I had to say, I think Caesar would be more concerned about the cavalry,
Right.
and Agrippa would probably never let himself get drawn into a certain area. He'd probably want to lure Alex to an area where he has the edge. But
Yeah.
Alex is fairly brilliant, so I don't know what would go on. Now, if it's a battle at sea, Agrippa's going to win. But
Yeah.
if it's a
For
battle
sure.
on land, it's hard. Caesar Caesar has the best shot on land. His yeah, I might say Caesar would win. But Alex Alex was one of a kind in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. But the
Yeah.
other thing is it falls onto the lower commanders. And Caesar's commanders were better. Decimus Brutus, Marcus Antonius, a lot of these guys were way better than Alex's
That's
Didache.
true. That's true. Yeah.
But Alex and Caesar also, how do they motivate their men? Alex would drink with him, but would then start murdering captains on occasion when he got in trouble.
That's right. That was pretty discouraging for them.
Caesar had a weird relationship with them because remember they once sang "Hide your wives, daughters, and sisters from him." Your cuckold's back. The guy who's gonna cuckold you is back. Oh my gosh! And yet, but Caesar, like, we got to bear in mind he had a rebellion once, and he handled it by shaming his men, saying, "All right, then, citizens," and they immediately said, "Wait, we want to be soldiers." So they loved him. It was a weird love, but it was a love. But on the other hand, despite this weird relationship between Alex and his troops, they went to the ends of the world for him.
Yeah.
We can't dismiss that.
It's just something to think about.
Well, even if I think Caesar, I'll say this doesn't mean I think less of Alex.
No, yeah.
But either way, I'm going to say Charlemagne beats them both.
No, for sure, yeah.
I'm joking.
I can't argue with that one, no.
But his cavalry, it's because Charlemagne just was like, I'm going to put all my points in cavalry and just ravage the enemy. But I think, but yeah. Like I said, I really like your stories. I like reading your stories more than I like my own essays. I'll be honest, with my essays, sometimes they blur into one another. So I forget about this essay or that essay, and like people will say, "Well, I like this essay. Which one is that? I wrote that." Okay.
I like your essays more than my essays because your essays are more in depth, and you get at things that, like I said, I haven't even thought about before.
Yeah. Sometimes it just write it on the spot. But your stories are far more interesting to me than essays.
Thank you.
Especially the Fate of the Empire and this new one I'm looking at, which I should have read, but I've just life's been beating me over the head and been
I understand
that. Life's been an asshole to me. But like I'm really excited because Odysseus is a great name. I shouldn't be like going, wow, that name. Like, that name's gonna stick with me.
Well, you can borrow it. You have my permission to borrow it if you want.
Not until I finish it and I review it down the road. I gotta review this thing.
Yeah, there's only 3 parts out right now. I think it's gonna end up being like around 10 parts when I eventually get to the end of it. So
cool. Then you could release that as a book.
Yeah, there you go. At least it should at least be novella length by the time it's done.
Yeah, that'll be your novella. And then you could have a descendant of his or Attilius as a lead for another set of stories. I don't know. Half the time with Dan and I, it's like, oh, what do we write? That's what we're writing.
That's pretty much that's how my brain does it too. My brain's like, all right, what are we writing today? All right, we're gonna pick this random thing out of a hat, and we'll start writing about that.
Yeah, that's how it operates. And at least once Dan's gone, that story. Go, yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. Or he's the one going, shouldn't we write this story? That one? Yes, that one. And you start getting to work and you go racking, like Yosemite said, racking.
Yeah.
But then there's other times when it's like, what about this story? Ooh, that story. Yes, that's that story. That's the one we're writing. That's
awesome.
But yeah. Hopefully this has also helped other people. And hopefully it'll also serve as a reminder to me to get my button gear and also read more of Legend so I can actually understand your passion for Gamal, because
well, I understand. Again, he's my favorite fantasy author, but even I'm not a big fan of that particular book. I think you would like his Troy trilogy more. There's also one called White Wolf, which is about a character named Skilganon that I think you would really like.
Okay.
And he's got uh, a series of books that are very Celtic inspired called the Regante, and the first one is Sword in the Storm, and that's very very Celtic inspired.
Storm in the Storm? Oh, Lord.
Sword in the Storm. Sword in the Storm.
Sword in the Storm.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking. My brain's turned off now. Um, all right. I'm just writing these things down because I will forget them with how my brain's not working right now. And mostly because I didn't get any sleep last night for some reason.
You gotta fix that tonight.
Yes, Dad. But I bet the young lion doesn't have this problem like I do. But it's just a bit of sleep apnea on occasion. Curse of being autistic.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
People talk about autism like, oh, it's a gift or it's a curse. Sometimes it's a curse.
I meant the sleep apnea, not the autism. But
yeah, well, they're connected to each other. It's just autistic insomnia, according to one doctor. It's like,
okay,
so your brain won't stop working autistically and thinking in its own weird autistic way, and then you go, wait, 3 a.m, haven't slept, and at which point it'd probably be better to just knock my head against the wall and knock me out that way.
I'll reach through the computer and slap you if you ever need it.
Especially if I talk smack about the Spartans.
There you go. Yeah, just start talking smack about, say, I need help sleeping. The Spartans suck.
Oh, good. No, it's like the Spaceball scene. What the hell are you doing? Vulcan. What was it?
Vulcan. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's where the shoulder meets the neck, like this. Yeah. That's probably the best scene in that movie, along with the a-holes thing.
My favorite is when they're going at really, really ridiculous speed and then they stop, all of a sudden he flies forward into the wall.
Oh yeah, it's like we'll have to take it all the way up to ludicrous speed. I don't know if the ship could take that. What's the matter, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? As a kid, I didn't understand the joke. I was like, why does he start acting like a chicken? I don't get
you have to be.
And as an adult, you go, Colonel Sanders. Oh.
Yeah. A very American joke. That and Pizza the Hut.
But the Colonel Sanders one was perfect. And then with the ludicrous speed, and they go plaid and whatnot.
Yeah, I forgot about them. I forgot about going plaid.
That is probably like the second greatest sci-fi movie of all times.
Oh, it's so good.
That one, I find episode 3 or Galaxy Quest. I like.
Oh man, I love me some Galaxy Quest.
Oh, Tim Allen. Oh man,
yeah,
he's so underrated.
For sure.
Man. I will be honest. Maybe I should write an essay on Galaxy Quest next week or something.
Oh man, do it.
Okay. I'll get Dan to put it on the board. I'll write Galaxy Quest for that first scene to start doing a series of essays on every scene.
There you go.
Frick, I missed that movie. I'm gonna rewatch it. I'm in a movie club, so maybe my next movie has already been chosen, Good Will Hunting. But after that, I'm going to choose Galaxy Quest.
There you go. Do it.
Anyways, I've taken up too much of your time, and I gotta write that darn essay. Yeah. So, well, I'm glad I got the chance to finally get you on the show. Which I know you're a father, so that's a battle and a half with your schedule and everything.
Yeah, I'm glad we're able to work it out.
Yeah, it's fine. We'll have to do it again.
For sure, man.
Hey, thanks. And hopefully this will also help you get more damn subs. Like, what the hell's up with that?
Yeah, that's the only reason I came on here. I'm trying to get more damn subs. No. But no, man, I appreciate you having me on. It's been great, and Like I said earlier, I don't know that I'm smart enough to be on this show. You're like throwing all kinds of historical curveballs at me, and I'm like, oh, I'm not as smart as you when it comes to history.
Uh, dude, you corrected me on the Greeks, so we're gonna say yeah, we're gonna go with a yes on that
Okay.
one because I don't know as much about Greek history as you. I'm gonna be blunt. I thought I did, then I proved myself an idiot and face planted in the dirt and went, well, but since then I've now decided I want to read more about the Greeks because it'd be nice to learn more.
Well, I can get behind that.
Yeah, and I got to watch this House of David thing as well. I'm going to note that one down. Um, and the, but like I said, you know more about the Greeks and the Spartans than I do, and um, like um, what we need is more Greek fantasy and more, well, your universe for one thing, out there because otherwise we're gonna, well, fantasy will not be on a solid footing, I think, because I'll tell you why I wanted this podcast with you. It's not just because we're friends and you write some of the best fiction out there, but it's also because I love the fantasy genre,
Mhm.
and well, I guess I got a bit of a vision of what it was, what it is, and what it could and should be. And to me, your stories are what I envision the genre should be and could be. And I think um, that if, let's say, you were not writing like fantasy and whatnot, the genre would be emptier and would not be the same. It, like, it's a bit of like a, wow, this will insult some, but it's like a God-given mission to me, and that to push this genre forward. And so to me, it's like Josh's stories, the Joshinator's stories are um, part, like, the genre must have more of your stories. And in that regard, it's if I can serve and help, then I've done my duty. Because if you get more subs out of it, perfect. Because this genre would be the sorrier without your story, like with Attilios or Ardicios and whatnot. And even if it's French fantasy with three musketeer types, which would be freaking hilarious and awesome, um, I think the genre needs that from you. And I'm not saying you have to do things. I just mean this is why I wanted you on the show and to also push my audience towards you because, for freak's sakes, you should already be at 10 times as many subs as what you have right now.
Well, I will say I got a lot of my subs from linking up with you back in the day. So you've already helped me get quite because I started once I started participating in like Warrior Wednesday and Sword and Saturday, I started gaining a lot of subs that way. So you've already helped me a bit.
Well, I got to help you more. And I'll be honest, I hit a wall right before 100 and nearly gave up. And you told me, well, here's how I do it, Joe. And then after that,
Yeah, after that you blew me out of the water. I shouldn't have given you my secret.
but see, this is why I'm giving you my secrets so that, you can catch up. Um, no, I don't always like anime these days, but I do like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I've gone up ahead, but that doesn't mean you know what I mean. There are different ways up the path, and I've often tripped, fallen into a hole, and had to climb back out because the road's pockmarked with them. But
Right.
I think in some ways in life you've gone further than I. But in this, it's just on Substack. I've gone a little ahead, and you'll catch up in no time. So that's why I think there's that. You got to give more than you take. So you got to help
Mhm.
others
Right.
because I'm lucky for once in my life to have gotten the audience I have, the readers I have. It's pure luck. So I got to help, share the luck around, the good
Right.
fortune. And in terms of the fantasy genre, I can't do everything on my own. So if it means, and you're writing short stories and deep stories steeped in meaning and depth and beauty in ways that I can't. So I've got to make sure readers find their way to you, and you don't lose confidence or hope for your stories or yourself as a writer, so that you keep going. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I really appreciate it. You're very, very, very kind.
Not really.
Well, you are to me.
Well, I have to be. You, like I said, I was going to give up on Substack, and you were the one who told me. Well, you said just keep going. The first 100 is hard, and new school fantasy and old school fantasy was what you used for tags, and that's when I tried that for a bit, and then I got a little larger, and then but yeah, I'll encourage everyone to go subscribe to Josh Tatter. I will be linking 2 of the stories down below when I post this on Substack. So for heaven's sake, do yourself a damn favor and go read them. Seriously, I'll actually say this. If people like my stories, if you like my Heracles story, if you like, I don't know, my Olympnomachi, which is my most popular stories, you'll like Josh's Fate of an Empire and his In the Valley of the Old Gods, I believe it's called. Valley of the Old Gods, yes. You'll love them because, trust me, it's not that the styles are similar, but a lot of the ideas are, I think, a little similar in some ways. And the love for Greece and Rome are in both stories, both in Josh's and mine. And if you like the French story that he wrote, which is hilarious, I might also have to go digging for that one. So read Josh's stories. You will love them. And I cannot stress this enough. And I'll be restocking them and annoying people if I have to go read Josh's stories. So subscribe to him, damn it. And that's all, folks.